Hello and welcome, I'm King Gaudi from Saxophone, and in this video we'll discuss 10 tips on how to become better at sight reading. If you can sight read well, that is a great gift to have because it means that you can pick up any piece of sheet music and play it immediately, or if you're playing with other artists and they're working on a song, they can hand you the sheet music and you can play along with them straight away without having to work it out by ear. On the walls behind me and to my sides you can see some of the sheet music that I sight read from time to time. This wall I call my Gerald Albright wall. I like the way he plays, I like the way he uses the altissimo range, I like the way how he contrasts ordinary notes with their overtone equivalents, and therefore on this wall I have 3 of his renditions. Now to get this sheet music I went to one of those free websites. There are lots of websites out there where you get musicians that collaborate. They all transcribe music from popular artists and they put it on the website, and you can go there, just type in the name of the artist that you're looking for, open up the sheet music as a PDF and print it off. And so basically that's what I've done here. I've just gone to those websites, typed in the name Gerald Albright, looked for the songs that I wanted, opened it up as a PDF, printed it off and placed it on my wall. The reason why it's on my wall in this fashion is that I don't need to keep on turning the page as I'm trying to play the music at pace. I can just stand in front of the wall or sit in front of the wall and play the music from one side to the end and not have to worry about turning the page or scrolling up, etc. The sheet music that I have on this wall, I basically screenshotted it from one of these play-alongs on YouTube. So you go into the YouTube channel, you go to one of these transcribed piece of play-along music, you take a screenshot of it, wait for the screen to scroll up, then take another screenshot, and you keep on doing that to the end of the music. Then you take all of these screenshots, you put it into a word processing program like Word, and then you're able to print it off like this. So on the bottom I have a Sonny Stitt rendition. Now if you're an alto player, probably you'll get into playing some of Charlie Parker's songs, since Charlie Parker was very influential on the alto saxophone, and Sonny Stitt is very similar to Charlie Parker. Above that I have my latest piece of sheet music that I put up there a few days ago, and that is the Flight of the Bumblebee. The Flight of the Bumblebee is there because it's going to help me with playing at speed, it's going to help me with chromaticism, and it's also going to help me with breathing, because if you ever heard the Flight of the Bumblebee played on the alto saxophone, then you'll know that the music is played at pace and there is not really spaces in there for you to take a breath. So it's going to be a good piece of music to practice circular breathing on, and I will put up a video shortly on circular breathing. So the music that I use to sight read either comes from printing them off on some of these free websites, screenshotting it from YouTube, transcribed play-alongs, using omnibooks which contain the actual music played by the artist, which are transcribed for the saxophone which you use, or actually going onto YouTube and playing along to some of these transcribed play-alongs. The advantage there is that you have the backing track with it, and there may be a needle which goes across the screen, or the actual notes will light up one after the other, which will actually help you with your timing. You can also buy books that have been written specially for learning how to sight read. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't start learning how to sight read. And having said all of that, where you can get all the music that you need to learn how to sight read, let's get started with this video. 10 tips on how to become better at sight reading. I will put links in the description below to actually help you with some of the things that I've spoken about today. Tip number 1, make sure that you practice every day. It's been said that sight reading happens when you play a piece of music for the first time. Every time you play that music again after that is practice. So what you want to do is to sight read a different piece of music every day. And that piece of music should be in a different key, a different time signature, and a different genre. If you sight read music that has lots of sharps and lots of flats, so the difficult keys, then when it comes to sight reading easier keys, it will be a lot easier for you to do. Tip number 2, when you start sight reading, do not stop. Continue playing the music all the way through. If you make a mistake, keep on going forward. If you lose your place, try to find where you are in the music and then continue forward. What you're trying to do is to sight read in a realistic situation. So if you're playing with other musicians and you make a mistake, you can't go back to the beginning. You have to just continue going forward. If you lose your place playing with other musicians, they're not going to stop for you. You're going to have to just find your way back into the music and continue playing the music. There are lots of books out there which have been written to actually help you sight read that will come with CDs or some musical accompaniment which can be downloaded. The best way to sight read is with some kind of musical accompaniment, because then you can obviously work out where you are in the music. If you lose your place, you can find your place back into the music and continue playing. Some of these CDs will just have a backing track. Some of these CDs will also have the somebody playing the saxophone part as well. So you can either play with the music alone or play with the music and the person playing the saxophone part, so you play along with them, which might be a lot easier when you're trying to learn to sight read. Tip number 3, know the notes of the key signatures and the accidentals. The last thing you want to be doing is trying to figure out what is a note as you're trying to sight read. The notes that can be difficult are the notes with the ledger lines, because you have all of those lines and you have to try and work out what are the notes. But the more you play, the more you become familiar with it. When I first started to learn how to sight read, I used to play a lot of the music that were in simple keys. So I'd play music that had maybe 1 or 2 sharps. I used to play a lot of the music that had lots of flats. Later on, what I came to realize is that I could easily recognize notes that had flats, but their enharmonic equivalents caused me some difficulty. So if I was playing a piece of music and I saw the note E flat, I would automatically recognize it, know automatically what were the finger positions, and I could play it instantaneously. But if I saw its equivalent, D sharp, then as soon as I saw that, I'd have to think, what is D sharp? And I'll try and convert it into flats. D sharp is E flat. Now I know it's E flat, then I could play it. So if it was flats, it would be a 1 process activity. If it was sharps, it would be a 2 process activity, because I'd have to convert the sharps into flats before I could play it. So you don't want to do that. You want to be able to play all of the notes instantaneously when you're sight reading. Tip number 4, learn your scales and arpeggios in different combinations. So when you learn your scales, learn to play them in thirds or fourths or in different combinations. Learn how to play chord tones in their inversions, because if you're playing music like jazz, you'll find that there are lots of scale runs in there. There are lots of chord tones in different inversions or broken chord tones. And if you've practiced it beforehand, then when it comes time to sight reading and this music comes up, it'll be easier and quicker for you to recognize it and easier for you to play. Also, certain licks which come up a lot in certain types of music, if you know the licks beforehand, you'll easily recognize it when sight reading, and therefore it'll be easier for you to play when you're sight reading. Tip number 5, when sight reading, recognize notes as clusters of notes rather than single individual notes. When you're sight reading, you don't want to be fixated on single notes, looking at one note at a time, but you want to be able to recognize notes which form patterns or clusters. This will make it easier for you to sight read. It's very similar to when you read. When you read, you don't focus on one letter at a time, but you recognize the letters as words, and you focus on the words or sentences rather than individual letters. If you were to read this passage at a normal speed, your eyes will move across the sentence in an even fashion. Charles Charlie Parker Jr., nicknamed Bird and Yardbird, was an American jazz saxophonist and composer. Parker was a highly influential soloist and leading figure in the development of bebop. However, if you were able to commit the words that you see to memory, then you would not need to follow the words in an even fashion. It might be possible to take a glance at the words and look away and still be able to read the passage as if the words were still present. This means that while you are not looking at the words, you could be looking at something else. Charles Charlie Parker Jr., nicknamed Bird and Yardbird, was an American jazz saxophonist and composer. Parker was a highly influential soloist and leading figure in the development of bebop. The quicker you can recognize the words and commit the words to memory, then that will give you more free time to look elsewhere. Applying this to sight reading, if you are able to recognize note patterns, then you could commit them to memory while playing them, and this will allow you free time to scan ahead to the notes coming up. This would only be possible if you practice a lot of note patterns that would eventually become easy to recognize at a glance. For example, here are the chord tones of a 7th chord with its inversions. Now, if you were familiar with playing these inversions, then when you see them in a piece of music, you could easily recognize them and commit them to memory. Here is Charlie Parker's Cherokee. Let's see if we can identify some patterns. I've indicated some obvious patterns, but each musician will come up with their own way of viewing these notes. Tip number 6, become familiar with rhythms. What you want to be able to do is to sight read a piece of music, look at the notes and automatically know what the rhythm is in the piece of music. This only happens with lots and lots of practice. There are some books that you can buy which are actually written to actually help improve your rhythm, or you can create some exercises to help you with your rhythm. Tip number 7, sight read the piece of music at a manageable speed. What you want to be able to do is to play the music in time. If you play the music and you make a mistake by playing a wrong note, it will be not so bad as if you're playing the music and you mess up the timing, which will be more noticeable. If you play a wrong note, it may be conceived as you improvising over the piece of music, but if you mess up the timing where everybody else is playing in correct timing, then it will be noticeable that you've made a mistake. Tip number 8, look over the sheet music before you play it. Obviously what you're looking for is the time signature, the key signature, the tempo. You're looking throughout the music for sections that are difficult to play, that will cause you some problems. You're looking for sections that repeat itself. You're looking for sections that are similar. You're looking for sections that have been transposed. If you know all of these things beforehand, then when it comes time to sight read and play, it will be a lot easier for you to do. Tip number 9, listen to lots of music. If you listen to lots of music of different genres, then you become more familiar to the different types of rhythm that is found within music. You can also hum out or sing out these different types of rhythms, which will obviously make it a lot easier for you when it comes time for sight reading different pieces of music. Tip number 10, analyze your progress and work on those things that you found difficult. Obviously, if you're sight reading every day, you're going to become better and better at it. But what you want to do is to identify those things that you find difficult and maybe create some exercises around it so you can get better at it and improve at those aspects. So when it comes time to sight reading again, it's a lot easier for you. So for instance, if you sight read and you find that you mess up on certain types of rhythms, then maybe you can create some exercise around those rhythms that will actually help you to improve. Well, hopefully you found this video helpful and informative. If you did, then obviously give it a like as usual and share it with your friends. If you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, then maybe consider subscribing. I upload videos all the time. Lastly, let me say thank you for watching this video, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.